Hey everybody, it's Wyatt here. So I wanted to talk to you guys about a little something that I've had on my mind for the last maybe year or so. But before we get into that, quick little life update. I live in an RV now. I'm enjoying it so far. It's exactly the size I need it to be. I really don't need too much room. I've been getting kind of minimalist over the last few years anyway, so it's spacious enough for me. I got plenty of room in here, plenty of room for all my stuff. Also, as some of you may have noticed, I have changed the name of the YouTube channel. It is now no longer Wyatt the Nerd, it is now Wyattoons Comics. Yes, it's YouTube. Don't really have comics on YouTube, it's more of a video platform. But I basically just wanted everything to kind of start falling under the Wyattoons Comics umbrella. I'm starting to get away from the Wyatt the Nerd brand that I established years ago. It's time to let that go. Okay, so anyways, what I wanted to talk about today, the thing that's been on my mind for the last few years, is the idea of test kitchens in comics. Now, for those of you who may not be up on the terminology, a test kitchen is also another word for research and development, a department that a business has, and specifically in restaurants, they have what they have is called a test kitchen, where they just test out stuff in a kitchen to see what new recipes will work, what new food ideas, what can we make for the restaurant that will catch on. And if it turns out to be really good, they, just put out the menu, put it on the menu, put it for sale, start making advertisements, everything. Suddenly they have a new food product for the business. And of course, in the non-restaurant side, it's R&D. They tinker around, come up with a cool new thing, and if it turns out to be really awesome, they mass produce it and make it for the business to sell. And over the last, I would say the last decade especially, it's been something that's been around for a little while. But over the last decade especially, as comic book movies, especially the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but comic book movies as a whole have really been growing in popularity, and studios have just been making more and more and more, trying to fill the demand. And what this has led to is companies treating the comic book industry as a test kitchen for their film industry. And personally, I'm a little torn about it. I'm not exactly sure where I fall. I probably fall somewhere in the middle, if I may explain my stance on this. So on the good side, here's kind of what we've seen here's the good stuff that we've seen come out of this mentality of treating comics like an R&D department to see where can our next movies come from, where can our next TV shows come from. We've seen a lot of stuff out of the big two, especially Marvel, where they're testing out new characters, new ideas, maybe even new genres, kind of mess around and tweak things so it's not always the specifically superhero stuff, but it's like superhero fantasy, superhero noir, superhero, mixing everything together. And over the last few years, we've seen them create these characters in the comics, kind of workshop them, let them grow, let them become something, a great character, great story, and then lead into movies, lead into TV shows. We've got the Miss Marvel show coming up soon. Miles Morales is about to get his second movie coming up soon. And they're talking about bringing him into the MCU possibly, so he'll be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or he'll be in the Spider-Man universe, the Spider-Verse that Sony has going on with the animated films, and then possibly in the MCU as a separate Miles, or, a second Miles. And then, of course, he's going to be the star of the next Spider-Man video game. And the good thing about test kitchens is that it gives people the room to experiment, to have fun, to try new things, to see what works. Just experiment. And of course, we've definitely seen, besides the big two, Walking Dead is probably the biggest one that can come to mind. It was this, little indie comic. Well, not little. It's from Image Comics, but it was an an indie comic that Robert Kirkman made, and it was a comic book first. Turned out to be a big hit. AMC picked it up, turned it into a big TV show, and it became an even bigger hit, and became arguably a cultural phenomenon, because for a few years everything was like Walking Dead. And it all started with that comic book, because the editors at Image took a chance. Robert Kirkman wanted to try something, kind of unique. Zombies had been around before, but he added a unique twist to it, a unique spin on it. The editors at Image thought it was really cool. They made it into a comic, and then so on and so forth. So on the good side, I think the test kitchen mentality just promotes, or at least can promote, the idea of experimentation, the need for creativity to grow and change and try new things. But then, of course, there's a downside, like everything. That test kitchen mentality can wind up forcing creators to create something that is not necessarily unique or different. For some publishers, it rather forces them to think, okay, what's going to be popular? What's going to sell? And obviously, in every corner of the creative industry, that is a point. You want to sell your books, you want to sell your movies, you want to sell movie tickets, you want to sell subscriptions to your TV service. But a lot of publishers, a lot of companies tend to find that good balance, and that's really what the industry, entertainment as a whole, is trying to find, that balance between creativity and commerce. But I'm sure, not pointing any fingers, not naming any names, but I'm sure we've all seen at least a couple publishers where they are so focused on the commerce side, where they just crank out a fresh new #1 and immediately they are already trying to sell the movie rights, they're already trying to sell the TV rights. They don't care about making a good comic. They don't care about telling a good story. They just want to flip that property, that IP, for a quick buck. And that's all they're thinking about, is just making that money. And so when you have that mentality with test kitchens, it winds up altering and changing the mentality of the creators, because they are no longer focused on trying to make something new or trying to experiment and make something new. They are just focused on what is going to sell. The other unfortunate thing is that this mentality can add to the idea that movies are the ultimate form of medium, or ultimate form of art, ultimate form of expression. There tends to be this weird hierarchy where, it's movies at the very top. That is the end goal for every IP, every creator, everything ever. TVs are right under it, and then, it just goes everything, and the comics are somewhere way down at the bottom. And I personally do not like this mentality. I think every art form, every medium stands on its own. Everything has its ups and downs. Movies, as great as they are, there's certain things you can't do in a movie. And I don't mean censorship or anything. I mean like the physical limitations of the medium. Same thing with comics. There are certain things that you just cannot do in comics. Point is, when you have that test kitchen mentality, it winds up buying into that hierarchy. It feeds into that hierarchy that movies are the absolute best, and then everything else comes below it. And I think that we really shouldn't be thinking of of art in that way. And so that's one of the downsides of the test kitchen mentality. You are simply just trying to use it basically as the unpaid internship to get to the job that you want at the top. And ultimately, that's why I'm kind of torn on the test kitchen idea. I like the idea of being able to try new things in what, let's admit it, is a financially cheaper art form. You can create all sorts of crazy worlds and characters and everything in comics, and only spend, a few hundred, a few $1,000s, even less if you're a web comics artist working from home, like me. But it's important not to have money on the brain so much. Yes, it is like I said, it is part of the industry. You need to balance creativity and commerce. But again, we can see a lot of people that balance way too hard, or that value the commerce side way too much, to where it winds up draining everything from the creativity, and they are not focused on making a good story. They are not focused on making a good comic. They are not focused on making a good movie. it just winds up feeling hollow and shallow, and it's very clear that they are just trying to make a quick buck. So ultimately, when it comes to comics as test kitchens, I that's kind of why I come in the middle. Like, it can definitely, we've seen it lead to great things. We've seen that mentality lead to really great characters, really great comics, and later on, really great TV shows and movies. But again, we've seen a lot of people go in the other direction with it. That's why ultimately I think it's a case by case basis. But those are just my ideas and my thoughts on comics as test kitchens. What do you think? Be sure to leave a comment down below. And also, you know what? What's a comic you're reading right now? What's a comic you're enjoying right now? Let's talk about some stuff that we like. Currently, I am reading Firepower by Robert Kirkman and Chris Samney. I have not finished it yet, but I am really enjoying it. The art is wonderful. The writing is wonderful. It feels like a really cool book. Again, I haven't finished it, but so far, I am loving it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. All that good YouTube-y stuff. And let me know also in the comments below, would you like to see a tour of my new home? Also, I'm going to try to do a little bit more face-to-camera stuff like this as time goes on. So if you simply want to see more of that, just let me know what you guys want to see in the comments. Take care, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye. I know what I want to say, and yet I can't make it get to this thing.